Welcome back to another edition of the Poultry Network Podcast. My name is Tom Willings. It's a special day today because I'm joined not by Tom Woolman, but actually the brains of the outfit, the man behind the Poultry Network Podcast. Jake, over to you.
Hi, yes. So, as Tom says, I'm not Tom Woolman. I'm Jake Davies, editor of Poultry Network. Some say Dark Overlord. But happy to sit in for Tom, who couldn't be here today. And I'm really pleased we've got some planning royalty with us today in the poultry sector. Ian Pick from Harrison Pick, a well-known name, certainly. Tom, you were just remarking about how well-known Ian is.
I think Ian Pick, royalty is the right phrase. When I first started at Noble Foods in 2010, I remember dear John Holt, sort of introducing me to the world of prospecting, of growing the network of farmers, and the name that kept coming up, and every time we looked at who was on the page, who was coming next year and the year after, Ian Pick. Oh, I'm talking to Ian Pick about this. Ian Pick. Ian, you must be singularly responsible for more poultry units nationwide than any other person. Is that right? Do you even know that? Is that correct?
It wouldn't surprise me. I've never actually added them up, but we'll be well into the thousands now. In terms of, I would say we've acted for 50% of the poultry farmers in the United Kingdom.
I suspect you're hiding your light, as they say, but it's great. It's great to have you here. Lots of stuff going on in the industry as regards planning and determinations, judgments, speculation as to how easy or difficult it will be to gain planning in the future. So looking forward to, forgive me, pick your brains on that over the next 10 minutes or so. But Jake, I know you've got a few things lined up. I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, well, I thought, a good way perhaps to introduce what you do, Ian, would be to sort of put us in the shoes of a prospective farmer who wanted to develop a poultry unit or indeed expand an existing one. What's the process, briefly from inception when they pick up the phone to you to, pre-screening, planning, some of the sort of tricky things which we'll come on to after that. But yeah, if you want to give us a whistle-stop tour of the process, that'd be a good start, I think.
Yeah, so we get inquiries on a daily basis for all aspects of poultry development. The first stage is the rules are very, very tight now. We've had changes in the ammonia thresholds They came in 2007, they were changed in 2018, they were changed again in 2022. So we're at a starting point where the acceptable levels of ammonia that you're allowed is the process contribution of 1%, which is basically nothing. So starting point with every job is we go on the Land app or onto Magic and we look at its proximity to the nearest protected sites, being triple SIs or special protection areas, special areas of conservation, anything that has an ammonia impact threshold. Run it through the ammonia screening tool or the scale calculation just to see whether we've got a prayer of getting it to comply with natural inland thresholds. So stage one. So I would say if we get 10 inquiries, probably 80% of them will fail at the first hurdle, which is we just can't achieve what we need to achieve in terms of ammonia. And then if they're still interested in that, in pursuing it, you've got to look at mitigation things. So like your dreaded air scrubbing technology. But first job, you have a look in terms of ammonia impacts as to whether we're compliant, and then we've got to review in terms of if it is in the floodplain, what does the access look like? What's the proximity to the neighbours for amenity purposes? So there's a big checklist of things that we go through first. So it's easy to rule them out. It's a lot more difficult to rule them in.
And I guess that 80% rule out at the beginning has changed enormously as a result of those kind of moving of goalposts. What's the general activity like now? You've got enormous confidence at market level, great returns, the likes of which we've never seen before. And we've seen the laying flock at least, but of course on the broiler side, the stocking density changes also driving demand. But then this nervousness that, as you say, that the rules are harder to abide by, or the limits tougher to meet. So from your perspective right now, are you busier than ever, or are you suffering for that 80% rule out?
No. So we have got more planning applications in the system at this moment in time for broilers and free range in terms of volume numbers than we have ever had in the history of. I've been doing this for 19 years, and this is as busy as we have ever been. It's like you're doing week in, week out, 80 hours a week, just trying to keep on top of this stuff. And we're not keeping on top of it because the stuff that's screening in at the initial stage, we're struggling to process the volume at the moment. So it's challenging, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Most of it's to do with broilers and the stocking density reduction. So, but there's a lot of new sites on the east side of the country. So, going into Moy Park, a lot of demand from all the integrators, a lot of interest, and it's business is booming at the moment.
You mentioned the east side of the country. I was going to ask you if there is regionality to that. From a laying perspective, you hear lots about north of the border. Still, Northern Ireland, particularly, in England, then Eastern Yorkshire. From your point of view, are there areas that are completely off limits?
So, the whole of Wales is completely off limits for a new project, a new planning application. Just the whole thing is essentially on hold. Natural Resources Wales are not going to support anything until such time as the Welsh Government have updated their manure management regulations. So everything that we've got live in Wales, we've had a letter from the local authority to say they want a year's extension of time. Just to wait for new regulation on manure management. Then there's more challenging places. So Herefordshire in the Y catchment,
Yeah, of
which
course.
was the area of growth. If we go back 10 years, there was a lot of activity in that area, but with the nutrient neutrality requirements and the chain of custody requirements on what you do with the manure, there's not a lot of activity in Herefordshire. There's quite a lot of activity in Shropshire, and there's a lot of activity down the east side of the country, so Norfolk, Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, and further north on the broiler side and the free range side. And then if we get north of the border, there's quite significant levels of activity on the laying side north of the border.
Yeah, so I hear. You mentioned there Shropshire, and there's been a recent case in the news, and we're going to come on and talk about that in a moment. But Herefordshire, you go back 3 or 4 months, and there was a determination in Herefordshire that chicken manure could be labelled as a waste by the local authority, and then there was the concern, the doomsday approach, that there was going to be this sort of migration of that policy then adopted across the rest of the country. Has there been any sign of that?
There's been mention of that court case in terms of mainly with objectors to schemes outside of Herefordshire, but that court case is basically limited to Herefordshire, and it's because of specific local problems within their catchment. So it's I don't really believe there's a wider legal implication to the Herefordshire case because it was specific to written policy in the Herefordshire Waste Local Plan.
Yeah, yeah. I'm certain it's still got to be a shot in the arm to those sort of campaign groups that are looking to limit the expansion, the extension of the poultry industry. I've got personal experience of being well outside of that catchment area, and looking to, engage with the local community, only to find that you've got almost professional anti-lobbyists travelling the country, having come from a completely different region the day before, to come and make their case and put their point across, but all based on the citizen science from the Y catchment. Yeah.
That's good.
Sorry, Jake, go on.
Yeah, I suppose sort of moving towards the more recent High Court ruling as well, and kind of following on from what you said, Tom. There's a huge PR engine behind these campaigners, and they successfully present to the media that these planning battles are ginormous, huge victories. It's completely changed the landscape for would-be applicants and planning people. I suspect the reality is a bit more nuanced than that. Ian, is that the case, that things will still happen if everything's done properly, and correctly from a planning perspective?
It is, and even within the judicial review was against Shropshire Council, and Shropshire's been a challenging place for a number of years. And that judicial review, whilst River Action did win, I would regard it as a little win rather than a big win. So it's not a fundamental point of principle. You cannot build a poultry unit. It's added in some challenges in terms of what information needs to be presented within your environmental statement. But it's a technique. It's added in additional technical requirements, but it's not the end of the world. It's something that needs to be addressed within your submission, but it's not something that's going to ultimately prevent these developments moving forward.
A message of confidence, that sounds like. It's good news for many.
Yeah.
Ian, it sounds like you're a busy man already, but if there is anybody out there that doesn't know how to reach you, how would you direct them to you?
So if you go onto our website, which is harrisonpick.co.uk, all the email addresses and telephone numbers are on there. So either myself on the mobile or my colleague Sam on his mobile, they're both on the website.
Fantastic. You've got to think that this is an industry that's incredibly well invested, but also incredibly important in the health of our nation going forward. We are, whether it's meat sector or egg sector, producing a very, very efficient, nutritious, safe, British food product that the vast proportion of our population continue to enjoy and consume, and do so, as I say, sustaining a good healthy diet. We have to be able to replenish our national housing stock. If we can't replace what we've got and build to grow in harnessing kind of modern best available techniques, then we're going to wither on the vine. We're going to see the same products just produced internationally and then imported across our borders, most likely with reduced standards on those farms. So we've got to find the right balance going forward, haven't we?
So I think on that point, the government is aware at the higher level of the problems. So there was a meeting with the minister and the industry last week, where these issues of manure management and opposition to the schemes and things, they were all being discussed in terms of trying to facilitate expansion, because the likes of the big integrators have got large investment portfolios. There's large amounts of money they're wanting to invest in the industry in terms of building new farms, increasing capacity, and at the moment it's being held back. So there's a lot of investment in the UK economy at stake. So something might happen, but it depends how quickly.
To talk to Tom's point really as well, it's like replacing your 30-year-old petrol car with a brand new zero emissions electric one. All these modern buildings are much better equipped to manage environmental concerns than really old 40-50-year-old sheds. So yeah, there's a clear imperative to, as you say, renew and replace our housing stock with modern equivalents. So let's hope the government's listening.
I haven't really if we've got an old operational site and we want it to replace it for a new site, we haven't experienced problems of others in terms of every demolition and rebuild site we've submitted for has ultimately got there in the end on an argument of betterment. I think it's a different story in Northern Ireland, but the actual knocking things down and replacing them with something better, they're the ones that are still getting through the system.
Good to end on a positive note. Ian, again, thank you so much for joining us. Jake, thank you for stepping in. Back next week. Let's see. I don't know if Tom's going to be back or you'll be here again. Maybe it'll be me that will step out next week. Who knows?
Who knows?
For you out there as well, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, please do visit the poultry.network website. It's a simple address, just poultry.network, and subscribe both to this podcast and the weekly newsletter. But until next time, thank you and goodbye.